The emergency broadcast cut through every channel on Earth simultaneously, overwhelming military encryption and civilian networks alike. On millions of screens, an alien face materialized, crystalline structures arranged in what might generously be called a head, with light patterns pulsing beneath translucent surfaces. Dr. Madison Cooper was elbow-deep in gravitational field calculations when her lab systems went dark, only to reboot with the alien transmission. Her team at the Gravitational Research Institute froze, coffee cups halfway to mouths, as the crystalline being began to speak. To all species of the Sagittarius arm, this is an emergency notification from the Galactic Council. A Class 1 cosmic event is imminent. Evacuation protocols are now in effect for Sectors 7 through 13. Madison's fingers flew across her haptic interface, pulling up deep space telemetry. The readings made her blood run cold. Something massive was moving through the void, tumbling end over end. Her instruments struggled to make sense of its scale. A deceased void behemoth has been detected on a collision trajectory with populated systems, the alien continued, its crystal fragments shifting in what seemed like barely contained panic. All civilian vessels are ordered to begin immediate evacuation procedures. Military assets will attempt tow. Holy shit, whispered Dr. James Martinez, Madison's lead physicist, as he pulled up his own readings. That thing's bigger than Jupiter. Madison's mind raced through calculations. The object's trajectory, its mass, the gravitational wake it was leaving. Something wasn't adding up. The behemoth's path wasn't random. It was too precise, too calculated, even in death. "Send me everything," she ordered, her voice cutting through the stunned silence of the lab. Gravitational fluctuations, radiation signatures, mass distribution. Everything. The alien transmission continued detailing evacuation routes, but Madison had stopped listening. Her attention was fixed on the patterns emerging from the data. The behemoth's tumble wasn't chaos. It was a controlled fall, like a dying whale choosing its beaching site. Dr. Cooper, one of her junior researchers, pointed at a secondary screen. The Chinese just launched their deep space array. Russians are bringing their gravity wave detectors online. Everyone's watching this thing. Madison straightened up from her console, her mind made up. Humanity had spent centuries looking up at the stars, dreaming of first contact. Now it had come, and it wasn't about handshakes or cultural exchange. It was about survival. But where other species saw only impending doom, she saw something else. An opportunity. "Get me a channel to whoever's broadcasting this message," she ordered. "And someone wake up the mining fleet control. All of them." "Mom." Martins looked at her like she'd lost her mind. The mining fleet. Against that thing. Madison allowed herself a small smile. "Humanity's been moving mountains since we learned to build levers, James. Now we're just going to move bigger ones." The alien transmission flickered as her team patched into its signal. The crystalline being's light patterns shifted in what might have been surprise as Madison's face appeared alongside it on millions of screens. "This is Dr. Madison Cooper of Earth's Gravitational Research Institute," she announced, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We've analyzed the behemoth's trajectory, and we have a proposal." The alien's crystalline fragments realigned. Earth is not a council member. This situation is beyond. With respect, Madison cut in, "We're the only civilization in this sector that specialized in moving really, really big things. While everyone else perfected FTL travel, we perfected gravity manipulation. That thing out there, it's just another mountain to move." She pushed a button, transmitting her initial calculations. "We can stop it, but we're going to need every mining ship we have, and we're going to need the council to shut up and let us work." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. Finally, the alien spoke, its tone carrying what might have been the first hints of hope. "The council recognizes Earth. Please proceed with your proposal, Dr. Cooper." Madison nodded to her team. "Start warming up the gravity drives. All of them." We've got a space god to catch. The Mariana Trench sample floated in its containment field, pulsing with a bioluminescence that shouldn't exist at those depths. Dr. Madison Cooper stood before the Galactic Council's emergency session, her hologram projected across thousands of light years as she gestured to the specimen. 6 months ago, we discovered this tissue sample at the bottom of Earth's deepest ocean trench, she explained, watching the varied alien representatives lean forward in their seats. At first, we thought it was just another deep-sea organism. We were wrong. This tissue is over 65 million years old. The council chamber erupted in murmurs. A floating orb of plasma, representing the Helios Collective, pulsed with skepticism. Impossible. No organic matter could survive. Exactly, Madison cut in. Unless it wasn't from Earth at all. She triggered another hologram, showing DNA sequences alongside gravitational readings. The tissue responds to gravitational manipulation in ways that defy our understanding of biology. Because it's not terrestrial biology, it's behemoth tissue. The chamber fell silent. A crystalline elder's fragments shifted in what Madison had learned was their expression of deep concern. You suggest this tissue came from a prior behemoth fall. Not suggest. Prove. Madison's fingers danced across her interface, bringing up geological data. Earth's mass extinction events weren't caused by asteroids. Those craters, they're impact sites from behemoth falls. Each extinction reset our evolutionary clock, seeding new forms of life while eliminating the old. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Earth isn't just another planet. It's a successful behemoth fall site. We're living proof that controlled impact is possible. And how does this help with our current crisis? Demanded the Helios representative, its plasma form flickering with agitation. Madison smiled. Because we've been studying this tissue for months. We've learned how it reacts to gravitational fields, how it can be manipulated. The behemoth heading toward populated space. We can influence its trajectory using the same principles. She brought up new simulations, showing the mining fleet's gravity drives interfacing with the behemoth's biological structure. Its tissue is still partially alive, responding to gravitational stimuli. We don't need to move the entire mass at once. We just need to shepherd it, piece by piece, using what we've learned from this sample. A serpentine alien, its scales shimmering with neural patterns, raised its head. Your species only achieved spaceflight a century ago. The technological gap is exactly why we can do this. Madison interrupted. While other civilizations focused on FTL travel and energy manipulation, we had to solve gravity. Earth's gravity well is a harsh teacher. Everything we built, every ship we designed, had to account for moving massive objects out of strong gravitational fields. She expanded the simulation, showing the mining fleet's formation. Our ships aren't pretty. They're not fast. But they can generate overlapping gravity fields strong enough to influence something as massive as a behemoth. We've been practicing on asteroids for decades. The council chamber filled with projected data as other species ran their own analyses. Madison waited, knowing what they'd find. The math didn't lie. Finally, the crystalline elder spoke. Your calculations are sound, Dr. Cooper. But the risks are better than certain death, she finished. The behemoth's current trajectory will devastate 12 systems. We can redirect it to an uninhabited sector, using our gravity drives to control the descent. We're not just moving a corpse. We're conducting the largest controlled landing in galactic history. She took a deep breath, playing her final card. And there's something else. The tissue sample. It's not just responding to gravity. It's generating patterns. We think these creatures communicate through gravitational waves, which means this isn't just a corpse falling through space. It's trying to tell us something. The chamber erupted again, but Madison could see it in their reactions. The shift from skepticism to possibility. She had them. The mining fleet is ready, she announced. We can begin operations within 24 hours. All we need is your clearance. The council members exchanged looks, a silent conversation passing between species. Finally, the crystalline elder's light patterns solidified into a decisive configuration. Clearance granted, Dr. Cooper. Show us what humanity can do. The massive mining vessel Deep Mountain broke formation from Earth's orbital shipyards, its gravitational drives sending ripples through space-time that made nearby alien observation ships shudder. Behind it, 30 more vessels of similar scale emerge, their hulls scarred from years of asteroid mining and planetary excavation. Ugly bastards, aren't they? Madison murmured from the Deep Mountain's command center, watching the alien vessels drift away from her fleet's gravitational wake. The mining ships were all function, no form. Massive cubic engines attached to reinforced industrial frames, with gravitational projection arrays sprouting from every surface like metallic thorns. "They're about to get uglier," Captain Sarah Reynolds responded, her hands dancing across the ship's gravitational control interface. "Spinning up the primary G-drives now. Coordination links with all vessels established." The Behemoth's massive form filled their long-range sensors, fragments of its dying body already beginning to break apart. Each piece was large enough to devastate a continent, and the main mass remained largely intact, a testament to the incredible biology that allowed these creatures to survive in space. "All ships, execute Formation Delta," Madison ordered. "Remember your training. This is just like moving the Mars asteroids, just bigger." The fleet split into 3 groups, their formation resembling a massive 3-dimensional net. As they approached the Behemoth, the scale became apparent. Even their massive mining vessels looked like minnows next to a blue whale. "First contact report from the forward gravity arrays," Lieutenant Chen announced, his voice tight with concentration. "The tissue, it's responding just like the sample. Gravitational resonance patterns are stable." Madison leaned forward, watching the readings. "Begin primary containment sequence. Group 1. Establish the baseline field." The first group of ships activated their gravity drives at full power. Space itself seemed to warp around them as they created a massive gravitational lens, catching the smaller fragments of the Behemoth's body that had broken free. Group 2. Prepare for primary mass manipulation, Madison continued. Group 3. Maintain perimeter stability. We can't let a single fragment escape the control zone. The alien observation ships watched in stunned silence as humanity's primitive fleet orchestrated a ballet of gravitational forces that shouldn't have been possible with their level of technology. But they hadn't counted on human stubbornness and industrial might. Major fragment breaking off from the primary mass. Chen's warning came just as a piece the size of Earth's moon tore free from the Behemoth's flank. "Deep Mountain, taking point," Captain Reynolds announced, pushing their vessel's drives to their limit. The massive ship moved directly into the fragment's path, its gravity arrays glowing white-hot as they generated a repulsion field. "All Group 2 vessels, converge on our position," Madison ordered. "Create a cascading gravity well. We're going to catch this piece and use its momentum to stabilize the primary mass." The mining ships moved with practiced precision, their ugly industrial frames belying the incredible complexity of their gravitational technology. Where other species saw brute force tools, humanity had created instruments capable of the finest gravitational manipulation. "Fragment contained," Chen reported, relief evident in his voice. "Primary mass rotation stabilizing." Madison allowed herself a small smile as she watched the readouts. The Behemoth's massive body was now fully enclosed in their gravitational net, its death spin slowly coming under control. "Send status update to the Council," she ordered. "Phase 1 successful. Beginning controlled descent protocols." A message came in from one of the alien observation vessels, its tone carrying what might have been awe. "The Council acknowledges humanity's unexpected capabilities. How did you achieve such precise gravitational control with your technology level?" Madison thought about the centuries of mining accidents, of learning to move mountains one painful lesson at a time. "We learned the hard way that there's no shortcut to moving big things. Sometimes the primitive solution is the right one." As if in response to her words, the Behemoth's tissue pulsed with bioluminescence, sending new gravitational patterns rippling through their sensor arrays. "Dr. Cooper," Chen called out, his voice urgent. "These patterns, they're not random. The neural tissue is actively responding to our gravity fields. I think it's trying to talk to us." Madison stared at the massive creature. They were cradling in their industrial gravity web. "Well then," she said softly, "let's make sure we listen carefully." The holographic display in Deep Mountain's lab pulsed with complex gravitational patterns, each wave formation dancing like sound frequencies translated into spatial distortions. Madison hadn't slept in 36 hours, but she couldn't look away from the data streaming in from the Behemoth's neural tissue. "Play it again," she ordered, rubbing her tired eyes. "Slow it down to 1/10 speed." Lieutenant Chen adjusted the playback, and the patterns shifted into longer, more deliberate wavelengths. "It's like whale song," he said, watching the gravitational frequencies ripple across the display. "But instead of sound through water, it's gravity through space-time. A language written in the fabric of reality itself," Madison murmured. She reached out, her fingers tracing the patterns in the air. No wonder no one detected it before. Everyone was looking for radio waves, electromagnetic signals. No one thought to check for coherent gravitational patterns. The ship's internal gravity shifted slightly as another mining vessel adjusted its position in the containment web. Through the viewport, the Behemoth's massive form continued its gentle, controlled tumble, now wrapped in a cocoon of human-generated gravitational fields. "Dr. Cooper," Captain Reynolds' voice came through the lab's comm system. "We're getting new readings from the primary mass. The neural activity is intensifying." Madison was already moving, Chen close behind her as they rushed to the bridge. The main display showed a cascade of new gravitational patterns, more complex than anything they'd seen before. "It's like it knows we can hear it," Chen said, quickly routing the data through their analysis systems. "The patterns changed the moment we adjusted our gravity fields to match its base frequency." Madison leaned over the console, her heart racing. "It's not random activity from dying tissue. This is deliberate communication." She turned to Reynolds. "How much power can you divert to the primary gravitational arrays?" The captain checked her systems. "Maybe 15% more, but it'll strain the containment field." "Do it," Madison ordered, "but only through the Deep Mountains arrays. Keep the rest of the fleet focused on containment. We need to respond to these patterns, show it we understand." As Reynolds made the adjustments, Madison worked with Chen to modulate their gravity fields, trying to match the simplest patterns they detected. It was like learning to speak by copying sounds, but with gravitational waves instead of vocal cords. The response was immediate and stunning. The Behemoth's entire neural network lit up, bioluminescence cascading across its massive form in synchronized waves with its gravitational emissions. The patterns became stronger, more focused, aimed directly at their ship. "My God," Chen whispered, staring at the readings. "It's not just communicating. It's been waiting for someone to hear it." Madison felt a chill run down her spine as the translation algorithms began finding patterns in the chaos. "These aren't random signals," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "This is a message, a warning." The bridge fell silent as the first rough translations appeared on their screens. The patterns were complex, many beyond their current understanding, but certain sequences repeated with unmistakable urgency. "Captain," Madison said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "send word to the Council. The Behemoth's death wasn't an accident. It came here deliberately, and it's trying to warn us about something out there in deep space." Reynolds nodded, but before she could send the message, the Behemoth's signals changed again. New patterns emerged, stronger and more complex than before. The translation algorithms struggled to keep up, but one thing was clear: these weren't just abstract warnings. They were coordinates. "It's showing us where it came from," Chen said, mapping the gravitational patterns to spatial coordinates. And whatever's out there, it's got the rest of its kind running scared. Madison stared at the coordinates, then at the massive dying creature that had chosen to fall into human space. "We cracked their language by accident," she said softly. "All our primitive gravity technology, all our industrial focus on moving heavy things, we accidentally learned to speak the language of gods." Through the viewport, the Behemoth's bioluminescence pulsed one more time, its patterns now unmistakably dire. Whatever it was warning them about, time was running out. The Deep Mountains observation deck had been converted into an impromptu command center, its walls covered in holographic displays showing gravitational wave patterns and deep space telemetry. Madison stood at the center of it all, watching as new data streamed in from the fleet's extended sensor network. "There," she said, pointing to a cluster of anomalous readings. "3 more behemoths just changed course. They're all heading toward populated systems." Captain Reynolds studied the trajectory plots, her expression grim. "Same pattern as our friend here. Controlled descent vectors, aimed at specific regions of space." The dying behemoth in their gravity web had gone quiet an hour ago, its neural activity dropping to minimal levels, but its final message had been clear enough. The coordinates it provided pointed to a region of space that, according to their new gravitational sensors, was practically screaming with activity. "Play back the last translation sequence," Madison ordered, and Chen quickly brought up the relevant data. The gravitational patterns rippled across the displays, now partially decoded thanks to their growing understanding of behemoth communication. The message was fragmented, but chilling. "Breaking/chang/chang space igtis must seed/pro-teat anchor pointius." Dr. Cooper, one of the younger analysts, called out, "Long-range sensors are picking up something else. The space around those coordinates, it's wrong." Madison moved to his station, examining the readings. The analyst was right. Fundamental forces weren't behaving as they should in that region. It was subtle, but to their gravity-sensitive instruments, it was like watching reality itself begin to unravel. "That's what they're running from," she said softly. "Something out there is changing the basic constants of physics. And these behemoths," she turned to look at their massive charge through the viewport. "They're not just dying. They're sacrificing themselves to create stable zones." Reynolds frowned. "Stable zones. Think about it," Madison explained, pulling up data from their tissue analysis. "Each behemoth's body carries enough mass and biological material to seed entire systems. When they fall, they don't just impact, they reshape their landing sites at a fundamental level. Earth is proof of that. They're creating safe harbors," Chen realized, eyes widening, "using their own bodies to anchor regions of space where normal physics still works." A new alert flashed across their screens. Their behemoth's neural activity was spiking again, but this time the patterns were different, more structured, almost like. "It's code," Madison breathed, watching the translation algorithms process the new data. "Not just warnings or coordinates. It's trying to teach us something." The displays filled with complex gravitational equations, biological data, and what looked like instructions. The behemoth was showing them exactly how its kind used their massive bodies to stabilize spacetime. "This isn't just a warning," Madison said, her voice gaining strength as understanding dawned. "It's a blueprint. They chose our space to fall in because we're the only ones who might understand in time. Our gravity technology, our experience moving massive objects. We're not just witnesses," Reynolds finished. "We're their successors." A message from the council flashed on the main screen, marked urgent. Long-range probes were confirming their findings, more behemoths were changing course, and the region of altered physics was expanding. Madison straightened, her mind racing with possibilities. "Captain, get me a link to Earth. We need every mining ship we can muster, and I mean everything. Asteroid miners, planetary excavators, gas giant harvesters. If it can manipulate gravity, we need it." "What are you planning?" Chen asked, already knowing the answer would be either brilliant or insane. Madison gestured to the Behemoths' final gift of data. They've shown us how they stabilize space-time. With our gravity technology and their biological knowledge, we might be able to do what they've been doing, but with precision instead of desperate sacrifice. Through the viewport, their dying behemoth pulsed one last time with bioluminescence, as if acknowledging their understanding. In the distance, more massive forms were beginning to appear on their sensors, each one carrying the same vital mission. The dance of the giants had begun, and humanity had just learned the steps. The Galactic Council's emergency chamber had never been so silent. Madison's hologram stood at the center, surrounded by representatives from 1,000 species, as she displayed the final decoded messages from their behemoth. "The anomaly isn't natural," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of the revelation. "Something or someone is deliberately altering the fundamental constants of physics in that region of space. The behemoths detected it first because they literally navigate by gravitational waves. They're living sensors for space-time stability." The holographic display showed the expanding zone of altered physics, a cancer in reality itself spreading across the galaxy's outer arm. Within it, the most basic laws of nature were shifting. The strength of atomic bonds, the force of gravity, even the speed of light itself. "Impossible." The Helios representative pulsed. "No technology cold. 300 years ago, we thought breaking the sound barrier was impossible." Madison cut in. "A century ago, we thought faster than light travel was impossible. The universe keeps proving our definition of impossible wrong." She gestured, and new data filled the chamber. The behemoth's final gift of information. These creatures evolved in the space between galaxies. They've been watching the cosmos for millions of years. When they detected this anomaly, they didn't just flee. They developed a strategy. The display shifted to show the complex interaction between behemoth biology and space-time itself. Their bodies are more than just mass. They're living engines of gravitational manipulation. When they die in controlled falls, their biological material doesn't just seed new life. It creates anchor points where normal physics is locked in place. Captain Reynolds' voice came through on a secure channel. "Dr. Cooper, deep space telemetry is confirming it. 3 more behemoths just entered the sector. They're following the first one's path." Madison nodded grimly. "The behemoths are creating a barrier, sacrificing themselves to establish a network of stable zones. But their deaths are desperate, imprecise. The casualties among younger species are considered acceptable losses compared to the alternative." The crystalline elder's fragments shifted in alarm. "And what is this alternative?" "Total physics failure," Madison said quietly. "If these altered constants reach populated space, every star would essentially forget how to burn. Every atomic bond would need to be rewritten. Life as we know it would become impossible." The chamber erupted in panic, but Madison wasn't finished. She brought up new simulations, showing the mining fleet's gravity drives working in concert with behemoth biology. "But they gave us their knowledge for a reason. Humanity's primitive gravity technology lets us do something no other species can. We can guide these falls with precision. We can help them create their barrier, but without the devastating collateral damage. You propose cooperating with these entities?" The Serpentine representative asked, neural patterns flickering with interest. "I propose surviving," Madison corrected. "The behemoths chose human space for their first controlled fall because they recognized something in us. While other species focused on efficiency and elegance, we built our technology around brute force problems. Moving mountains, stabilizing gravity wells. We accidentally created exactly what was needed to speak their language and carry on their work." New alerts flashed across the chamber's displays. The anomaly was expanding faster now, its edge becoming visible even to conventional sensors. "We don't have time for debate," Madison declared. "Earth is mobilizing every gravity-capable ship we have. The behemoths are coming, carrying the biological keys to stabilizing space-time itself. We can either work with them, using our technology to ensure controlled falls in uninhabited systems, or we can watch them desperately sacrifice themselves across populated space. The council chamber was silent again, but this time it was different. The panic had been replaced by something else. Hope. "What do you need from us?" the crystalline elder asked. Madison allowed herself a small smile. "Everything you've got. Because we're about to attempt the largest engineering project in galactic history, building a wall against chaos itself, one behemoth fall at a time." Through the quantum link, she could feel Deep Mountain's gravity drives humming, ready to dance with gods. The next behemoth was approaching, and this time, they would be ready. Mining fleet actual to all vessels. Commence Operation Firewall. Captain Reynolds' voice echoed across the combined human-alien fleet, now grown to over 300 ships. The Deep Mountain led the formation, its enhanced gravity drives humming with power borrowed from a dozen advanced civilizations. Behind it, Earth's entire mining fleet had been retrofitted with crystalline technology, their crude industrial frames now gleaming with alien modifications. Madison stood at the fleet's central command, watching as 5 massive behemoths approached their position. Unlike the first, these weren't dying. They were coming deliberately, having understood humanity's response to their fallen companion. Translation matrix active, Chen reported from his station, now upgraded with council technology. They're singing to each other. Gravitational harmonics unlike anything we've recorded. The behemoths moved with grace that belied their impossible size, their bodies rippling with bioluminescence that pulsed in sync with their gravitational communications. They were coordinating, preparing for something unprecedented. "All ships, take position according to the Fibonacci sequence," Madison ordered. "Remember the simulations. We're not just guiding their falls. We're conducting a symphony of gravity itself." The fleet split into precise formations, creating a 3-dimensional lattice of overlapping gravitational fields. Each ship's position had been calculated to amplify and direct the behemoth's natural abilities. "First behemoth is in position," Reynolds announced, beginning gravitational resonance. Madison watched as the massive creature responded to their gravity fields, its body starting to break apart not in chaos, but in perfectly controlled segments. Each piece was being guided by the fleet's combined technology, human industrial might working in concert with alien precision. Neural activity spiking across all 5 specimens, Chen called out. They're teaching each other. The fall patterns are being shared, refined. The first segments began their controlled descent toward an uninhabited system, each piece carrying the biological keys to stabilizing spacetime. Where their first encounter had been desperate improvisation, this was a carefully orchestrated dance. Council ships reporting successful containment of physics anomaly at first impact site, Reynolds reported. The barrier is forming exactly as calculated. Madison allowed herself a moment of pride. Humanity's primitive approach to space, all those years of focusing on moving heavy things through gravity wells, had turned out to be exactly what the universe needed. Second behemoth beginning its sequence, Chen announced. But something's wrong with the third one. Its neural patterns are chaotic. Madison quickly shifted her attention to the readings. The third behemoth was struggling, its massive form shuddering against their gravity web. Its pattern spoke of pain, of something wrong at the edge of space. The anomaly, she realized. It's accelerating faster than we predicted. That behemoth came through the leading edge. It's been exposed. Do we abort? Reynolds asked, her hand hovering over the emergency protocols. Madison studied the patterns, remembering everything they'd learned about these ancient beings. No, we adapt. All ships in Section 3, reconfigure your gravity fields to match the behemoth's disrupted patterns. Don't fight its chaos. Use it. The fleet responded with practiced precision, their gravity fields shifting to create a new kind of resonance. The struggling behemoth's movements began to smooth out, its chaotic patterns gradually aligning with their modified fields. It's working, Chen breathed. The other behemoths, They're copying our modifications. They're learning from us just as we learned from them. Through the command center's viewport, Madison watched as the massive choreography continued. Pieces of behemoth tissue, each precisely guided by human ships, seeded targeted systems with their reality-anchoring properties. The barrier was taking shape, a wall of stabilized space-time built from the sacrifices of cosmic giants and the determination of human ingenuity. "Message from Earth," Reynolds announced. "The next wave of mining ships is ready. They're bringing every gravity drive we could retrofit, even the old Mars orbital tugs." Madison nodded, her eyes on the approaching edge of the physics anomaly. They could see it clearly now, a shimmer in space where reality itself was being rewritten. But before it, a new kind of wall was rising, built by the combined efforts of humanity's industrial might and the behemoth's ancient wisdom. "Tell them to hurry," she said quietly. "The storm is coming, and we need every ship that can dance with giants." 1 year after first contact, the view from Deep Mountain's observation deck had changed dramatically. Where once there had been empty space, now a shimmering barrier stretched across the galaxy's edge, a wall of stabilized systems created from the carefully guided falls of over 50 behemoths. Madison stood at the viewport, watching as the latest mining ship squadron returned from their barrier maintenance run. The vessels looked different now, their industrial frames still ugly by alien standards, but their gravity arrays now pulsed with crystalline enhancements, allowing them to speak directly with the surviving behemoths. Final section of the barrier is holding at 99.8% stability. Chen reported from his station, his console displaying the stream of gravitational wave data. "The physics anomaly hasn't advanced in 3 months." "And our friends?" Madison asked, though she could already see them. 3 massive forms gliding through space near the barrier, their bioluminescence rippling in patterns that had become familiar over the past year. "Still teaching us," Chen smiled. "Every day they share more of their gravitational language. The Council's xenolinguists are going crazy trying to keep up with all the dialects we're discovering." Captain Reynolds entered the command center, her uniform now bearing both Earth's mining fleet insignia and the new barrier guard patches. "Latest report from the Council," she announced. "They're officially recognizing Earth as the headquarters for the barrier guard. Seems they finally admitted we're the best qualified to maintain it." Madison nodded, remembering the initial skepticism they'd faced. Now, every major spacefaring civilization was sending their ships to Earth for gravity drive retrofitting, learning the industrial techniques they'd once dismissed as primitive. "New gravitational transmission coming in," Chen called out suddenly. "It's different, more complex than anything we've seen before." The behemoths near the barrier had begun moving in synchronized patterns, their massive bodies weaving gravitational messages of unprecedented complexity. As the translation matrix processed their communication, Madison felt her breath catch. "They're not just teaching us anymore," she said, reading the patterns. "They're passing on their legacy. Everything they know about space-time, about the physics that shaped them. They're giving it all to us." Through the viewport, more behemoths were arriving, not to fall, but to share knowledge. They had recognized in humanity not just the ability to understand their language, but a kindred spirit, a species that faced impossible challenges with stubborn determination and industrial might. "Message from Earth," Reynolds announced. "The first new gravity ships are ready for launch, built from the ground up with behemoth-inspired technology." On Madison's console, images appeared of the new vessels. They weren't beautiful by conventional standards. They still bore the practical, industrial aesthetics of human engineering. But their gravity arrays were works of art, designed to speak the language of cosmic giants. The barrier's not just a wall, Madison realized, watching the behemoths continue their intricate dance. It's a bridge, between their kind and ours, between the physics we knew and the physics we need to understand. A new alert flashed across their screens. More anomalies detected at the edge of known space. The universe was changing, evolving in ways they were only beginning to comprehend. But this time, humanity wasn't facing it alone. Mining fleet actual to all ships, Reynolds announced, a proud smile on her face. Begin barrier guard rotation Delta. Let's show our teachers what we've learned. As the fleet moved into position, their gravity drives singing in harmony with Behemoth communications, Madison thought about that first desperate message that had interrupted every channel on Earth. What had seemed like an approaching apocalypse had instead become humanity's greatest opportunity. A chance to prove that sometimes the most primitive solution was the right one. The Behemoths had chosen human space for their first fall, not because they were desperate, but because they had seen something in humanity's stubborn industrial approach to space. Where other species sought elegance, humanity built for endurance. Where others saw primitive technology, the Behemoths saw potential. Near the barrier, a new Behemoth was teaching a squadron of mining ships its gravitational language, passing on knowledge that had taken millions of years to acquire. And humanity, with its primitive focus on moving mountains, had turned out to be the perfect students for the cosmos' greatest engineering project. The legacy of the Titans had found its inheritors, and they came not in sleek ships with advanced technology, but in ugly mining vessels with gravity drives built to move worlds.